Fortifying your business. That's what the webinar was all about, helping you to strengthen your margins that allow you to really grow profits. In that session that we did, 2-hour session, we covered things like how to price your services. We ran through the formula and how to identify a billable hour. We also created the concept of everybody is selling time and material, but it's all about how you package the time and material. One of the things that we also talked about with pricing is that we uncovered that it's not just the billable hour, but it's also the billable hour with correct task time and material with the correct markup, and that created the retail pricing. Those that attended, we had the ability to do a workshop style flip chart where I gave an example of how we validated that yes, truly we did price our services at the correct margin. Then we moved into talking about direct cost management. And the very first thing that we talked about with direct cost management was knowing your numbers. Listen, you need to know your numbers as an operator. It's just that simple. It's hard to fly blind and know that you're going to land in the right place and land safely. Operating the business by the checkbook, no bueno, not good at all. You need to make sure you know your numbers. So as a part of that, knowing your numbers, we really dug into the two types of costs. We talked about variable cost and fixed cost and how both of those play a role in direct cost. We discussed what exactly is a good margin. And the answer to that was we had to create a universal language, because when we use the word margin, it's all about what do you count above the line. So we all agreed while we were in that training of what would we account for that is above the line to make sure that as we're speaking margin terms, what exactly is a good margin. We talked about field labor, we talked about material, we talked about equipment, we talked about permits, subcontractors, and lastly, equipment rental. All of those were above the line. We started talking from there about how pricing plays a big role in that. And one of the challenges that some of us see is that we don't account for service agreement pricing, meaning that I offer service agreements and we offer a discount for service agreements to our customers. And that can erode the profitability of the company if your company is not set up to price accordingly for that discount to service agreement customers. After we did that, then we drove into direct cost. Direct cost, we started with very first field labor. We talked through field labor management about accounting practices and how accounting practices could play a major role in our field labor rates running high. We talked about some of the ways to solve that in the webinar. Then we dove into comp plans. We talked about how compensation plans can play a major factor in affecting our overall profitability because we could have out of line direct labor. Now, after we talked about that, I said this and I want to share this with you. No compensation plan will ever substitute for good management. They are important to managing field labor, but those alone will not substitute for management. We talked about performance pay, commissions, and task pay, along with hourly plus and salary plus. And we talked about the pluses and minuses of those. From there, I also asked the question, is your current compensation plan scalable? Here's how you'll know if it's scalable. Have one of your new team members sit down that's inside of working with your team for 6 months. Ask for them to explain the compensation plan. If they can't explain it, there's a really good chance it's too complex. So you might need to simplify that. After we moved into making sure that we had a system for the right tech for the right call. And the right tech for the right call started with what we called a call priority matrix, and we taught for that a little bit. We talked about a technician legend. And then lastly, we talked about how callbacks and warranties can get in the way that create a high labor rate because of unproductive labor. That shifted into the number 4, which was unproductive labor. So you've got to make sure that you manage that unproductive time, keeping track of sales to hours worked, making sure that we're keeping a good eye on that. Then we shifted over into material and equipment management. We talked about how to account for warranty parts and equipment. We talked about a process for that. We talked about the process of PO systems. And let me just say this, most contractors don't really have real good PO systems. It's just more of an extra work for the accounting department with no approval process and check and balance. And we talked about how to get away from that, making sure PO systems were helping us manage our business. Then we talked about job costing. Anything over $1,000 needs to be job cost. All install calls need to be job costed. This will help us to see where our margins are and find out whether or not our pricing is set up correctly. Then we started talking about improper accounting practices, asset purchases versus cost purchases, and not accounting for them correctly. Then we moved into inventory management. We talked some strategies around vehicle and warehouse management, how to make sure that we're accounting for vehicle management of material, stock, and non-stock items. And then lastly, we talked about how do we handle negotiating pricing with our vendors, and it's not what you think it is. Vendors are an extension of our team, and they must be treated equally and fairly and be treated well in order for them to help us take care of our business, to take care of our customers. Then we talked about the 3 other direct costs. Number 1 is permits, number 2 is subcontractors, and number 3 is equipment rental. After we did that, we talked about strategies for those 3s to be able to muscle up on margins, therefore creating a higher level of profitability in the business. You missed the webinar, my friend, but I wanted to get you a good recap of what went on during that time. I hope that you found this video very helpful, informational. If we can be a help for you at the Blue Collar Success Group, don't hesitate at all to give us a call.